me bring my mic up, right? Check, check, check. How's it going, everyone? So, yeah, I wasn't going to do live stream today, but I accidentally clicked stream earlier, and a couple people were on, so I figured, okay, let's do a live stream. What this stream's going to be about is debunking the Washington Post argument that Joe and Hunter Biden did nothing wrong in the Ukraine. And the only reason I saw this was if you go to Twitter, who you know is censoring the New York Post story from yesterday, which shows actual emails that even the Biden camp hasn't decried or hasn't said were fake. Twitter is censoring that article. So let me talk about that real quick, and then we're going to get right into the debunking of this Washington Post story thoroughly, seeing as how this is what the left does. They bury a story, and then they wait, they collaborate, come up with an answer, and then they all repeat that answer verbatim without actually thinking, looking into the issue themselves. So everybody citing this Washington Post as debunking the story. I'm going to debunk the Washington Post quite easily so that you'll be able to debunk it when all of your friends say, oh, no, the Washington Post said, or BuzzFeed said, but they're just quoting the Washington Post. The developments since my live stream last night are this. Originally, as I said, there's basically an admission that we see the steps that the Democrats and their supporters go through when a big bombshell story like this breaks. So, for example, way back when we found out that opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton was unverified and used to spy on Trump's campaign, they went through these same steps. The first is to deny it happened. So they just keep saying without any specific facts, oh, this is all lie. It's all lie. It's just all lie. But they don't say what? Were the emails lies? Were the pictures of Hunter Biden photoshopped? What's going on? We have proof that there was a computer that was taken by the FBI from this computer owner, or from this computer repair owner. So what part of it were lies? And I said that it'll go from, this is basically an admission. Because if it was not a big story, who cares if it's true or not? Right? They would have just said, oh, well, these emails don't show anything untoward. It's no big deal. Instead, they rushed to just say, no one should share this story. Censor it. It's all lies. Well, what that is an admission that they're telling you this is a big deal. If it was proven true, it's a big deal. And so Joe Biden's team by the time I was doing my video last night came out and said, we checked Joe Biden's records and there's no record on meeting or no meeting on record, with this Burisma official. But that's different than saying it never happened. Well, then Joe Biden's team clarified, well, maybe there was an unofficial meeting. We can't rule out the fact that happened. In other words, the story is true. And Joe Biden did meet with this Burisma official. And so when he yelled and screamed at reporters and people asking questions, I've never talked to my son about his overseas business dealings, he was lying. That's a lie. We now know that. Now, the media won't dig into it. They'll bury the story because they're not the media. But we now know that that's a lie. Has Biden's team came out and said these emails are inaccurate? Has anyone? In fact, Twitter and Facebook seem to be suggesting that the reason you can't see them is because they're hacked. Well, if they're hacked, they're real. Right? So the information's accurate. And also, they're not hacked. If this came, as we're told, from a computer repair shop, that the bill wasn't paid, after so long, it becomes the property of the computer repair shop. Another question to ask is, why did the FBI sit on this information for so long? So these are all important questions since last night that we've had since the development of me doing my video. Now, let's get to the meat of this video. So where am I at here time-wise? Because I want to clip this. We'll wait right until 5 minutes. So I'll stall for 15 seconds, and then we'll get right to the story here. So I hope everyone's having a good morning, and I think this will be a good video. It'll be short and sweet and to the point. All right, so what this is when you go to Twitter, the same Twitter that's censoring the New York Post story about Biden and these emails that show that he actually lied, that he did have connections to people in Burisma, despite the fact that he said he had no conversations with his son whatsoever about his business dealings in the Ukraine. We now know that that's definitively a lie. And we also know that Hunter Biden was in these emails cashing in on the fact that his dad was vice president. He was asked by this corrupt company, Burisma, corrupt according to Joe Biden, according to Barack Obama. He was asked by them, to that same company, to use his dad's influence to get them out of trouble, which is exactly what he did, right? So all of this was on Twitter. It was censored. It was a New York Post, that's a venerable newspaper. It's been around for over 100 years. This mainstream outlet was censored by Twitter, censored by Facebook, and places like that. And now we see the debunking effort that's coming from the Washington Post. So what I want to do is show you what I'm seeing. Now, you see this section where it says what's happening? That pops up on the right of my Twitter screen. I'm sure it's the same for all of you. So this is like the major news story of the day. This isn't something that I clicked on originally. It just popped up. So when you go on Twitter, they're censoring the actual New York Post story, but they're promoting the Washington Post debunking of that story. So I felt, seeing as how this is the left strategy, that I'm actually going to debunk what Twitter put out as Washington Post debunking of the Ukraine story. So let's get directly to that. You see the headline here. Joe Biden did not push out a Ukraine prosecutor for investigating his son, the Washington Post confirms. A series of emails obtained by the New York Post were published on Wednesday in a story alleging that Hunter Biden, the son of Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, introduced his father to a top executive at a Ukrainian energy firm, Burisma, and that Biden pushed for the firing of the prosecutor investigating Burisma. However, according to the Washington Post, then Vice President Biden played no role in pressuring Ukraine officials into firing the prosecutors, who also was not investigating the energy firm. It also doesn't detail whether the elder Biden actually met with Hunter's Ukrainian business associate. So let's go through what's wrong with this right out of the gate. First off, the New York Post story did not claim that Biden was pushing for the firing of the prosecutor investigating Burisma. Or rather, maybe it did, but it wasn't the crux of the story. The crux of the story was the emails show that actually Burisma was pushing Hunter Biden to leverage his father in order to get them out of trouble. And that Hunter Biden was more than willing to attempt to do that and was paid handsomely for doing so. It also shows that Joe Biden's claim that he never discussed Hunter Biden's business dealings seems to be false, because in actuality, these emails suggest that Joe Biden met with this Burisma official. Joe Biden's team has since came out and said, well, it wasn't on our official calendar, but we can't rule out that a meeting like this did take place. So this debunking effort is a red herring. It's trying to focus on other things, but even the things that it's focusing on, it's just factually incorrect about. So the first thing that it says is, then Vice President Biden played no role in pressing Ukrainian officials into firing the prosecutor. Now I'm going to put on my headset here. Now I could post you all sorts of things from different outlets showing that that's not the case, but I figured the best thing to do is to allow Joe Biden himself to tell you what he did. Now remember, look at what the Washington Post fact check says here. The vice president played no role, none, no role whatsoever in pressuring Ukrainian officials to fire the prosecutor. Okay? No role. Not he played a limited role. He attempted to. He played no role.
I guess the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Then Vice President Biden played no role in pressuring Ukrainian officials into firing the prosecutor. This couldn't be more of a lie. We just heard it from Joe Biden's own mouth. Now, not only did he play a role, he played the crucial role. And how do I know this? Well, as I'll get to in a moment here, going further into the Washington Post article in 2019 on this, they claim, well, all of these other people, Obama, State Department, yes, of course, no one's denying that Obama was involved in this. Of course, as if that makes it okay. Oh, it wasn't Joe Biden, the vice president, forcing the firing of the prosecutor looking into his son. It was the president, Barack Obama, forcing the firing of the prosecutor looking into his vice president's son. That's still corrupt. Can you imagine if Mike Pence had a son who was involved in a corrupt, according to Mike Pence and Donald Trump, right? Not according to me, according to the actual president and vice president, a corrupt company. Can you imagine if Mike Pence's son was involved in it? and then Donald Trump forced the firing of the prosecutor, do you think people would say, oh, that was cool. It wasn't Trump's son. It was Mike Pence's, so it's okay. Of course not. It's still corrupt. It's still using a quid pro quo with your tax dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor looking into an executive branch official's family. Isn't that exactly what they tried to, which they did impeach Trump over? Oh, wait. As always, they do exactly what they claim. So here we see Twitter is posting the Washington Post as debunking the New York Post story. And right out of the gate, we can see their first central claim is an absolute provable lie. So why would we believe anything else they say? Remember, I saw a clip from the Today Show today saying, oh, this New York Post, it's been thoroughly discredited. It's very dubious. You see all these media people saying, it's not proven, it's dubious, it's discredited. Yet these are the type of things they put out. Okay, what about it was discredited? Well, first off, Vice President Biden played no role in getting this prosecutor fired. Yes, he did. He admitted. If it's true that all these other places wanted him fired, and therefore that proves that Biden didn't play a central role, then why did Ukraine push back? According to Joe Biden's own story, despite the fact that allegedly all of these people in the European Union and all of these credible people wanted Viktor Shokin fired, Ukraine resisted. It wasn't until Joe Biden personally threatened them with a 6-hour timeline that they weren't going to get this $1 billion that they actually fired that prosecutor. So I don't care if a bunch of people in the EU wanted him fired. That is irrelevant to the story. Joe Biden was the one who personally forced the firing of this prosecutor. Ukraine wasn't going to fire the prosecutor until this quid pro quo was offered, period. And the evidence is they had every opportunity to, and they refused. In fact, according to Joe Biden's own story, even when Joe Biden issued this quid pro quo, the Ukrainian government pushed back. They said, you're not the president. We don't have to listen to you. And Biden said, call him. You're not getting that money until you fire him. And so they fired that son of a bitch. That's what Joe Biden said. So the Washington Post is lying. Period. If they're lying here, why would you trust them on anything else they're saying? Unfortunately, the average independent person that's not following this story just says, oh, all of these social media companies censored this story, and here we have the Washington Post debunking it, so it must be debunked. It's not true. By the way, if they're willing to so blatantly lie about this when we could actually see the video of Joe Biden proving that their claims are untrue, what else do you think they lied about? When it comes to riots and Black Lives Matter, when it comes to things like COVID? If they're this blatant in their lies to you, what else do you think you could trust them on? Now, the next point. They say the prosecutor, one, Biden played no role in getting him fired. That's a lie. Number two, that prosecutor was also not investigating the energy firm. That's a lie. Now, again, I could show you that Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor that was fired, I could show you his sworn affidavit in testimony to a court that shows that Poroshenko brought him in and told him he was directly being fired because Joe Biden wanted him fired because he was investigating Burisma and Hunter Biden. But I understand. Everyone will say, Viktor Shokin's a liar, so we're not going to take that words for it. So instead, what I'm going to do is something else. If this is true, that the prosecutor, remember, he was the head of the prosecutor general's office, the PGO in Ukraine. That's who Viktor Shokin was. That's who Joe Biden got fired. Joe Biden and the Washington Post and Barack Obama and all of these other Democrats are saying, actually, Viktor Shokin was taking no steps to investigate Burisma. That's their claim. Okay? Let me prove to you that that's a lie. This is from an official news agency in Ukraine. Note the date here. This is from February 4th, 2016. Court seizes property of ex-minister Zlochevsky in Ukraine. Zlochevsky is the person who owns Burisma. He was Hunter Biden's boss. Now remember, what's the Washington Post claim? That the prosecutor was not investigating Burisma. Let's read. The movable and immovable property of former Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of Ukraine, Mykola Zlochevsky in Ukraine, has been seized, according to the press service of the Prosecutor General's office. The PGO filed a petition to court to arrest the property of ex-minister Zlochevsky, from which arrest was withdrawn, and other property he uses, namely a housing estate, and it goes through and lists all of the estates. The PGO clarifies that the court satisfied the petition on February 2nd, 2016. Quote, thus none of the objects of movable and immovable property which was seized under the previous court ruling has not been excluded from Zlochevsky's property, the press service said. Zlochevsky is suspected of committing a criminal offense under Part 3, Article 3682 of the Criminal Code of the Ukraine, illicit enrichment. In other words, the allegation, the reason that Joe Biden and Barack Obama was saying that Burisma was corrupt was allegedly they had illegally enriched themselves with the natural resources of Ukraine. That was the allegation. Here we see that on February 2nd, 2016, we actually see that Shokin, in his efforts of investigating Burisma, seized the property of the owner of Burisma. Now, according to the Washington Post and Joe Biden, there was no investigation from Shokin into Burisma or into its founder, Zlochevsky. Then how did they seize the property? Again, I talked about this last night, but in the United States, we often see that there are active investigations, namely against Trump, people associated with Trump, or just non-political active investigations that never result in the actual seizing of property. If there is an investigation and property is seized, everybody understands that that is an important step that the investigation is moving on. We all know that. So, for example, if we found out tomorrow that the Southern District of New York seized Don Jr.'s property, seized his home and like computers and stuff in it, we would all say, my God, the Southern District of New York is heavily investigating Don Jr. Every one of us would say that. But they want you to believe that Shokin seizing the assets of the Burisma founder wasn't evidence that there was an investigation going on. That is ridiculous. This is proof that this was happening. Now, I could go through and show you that as a result of this, Blue Star Strategies, which again was named in some of the New York Post articles, this was the law firm in the United States that was working on behalf of Burisma. Blue Star Strategies immediately contacts after this stuff seized. In fact, I'll go to this article. So here we have Fact 6. This is from John Solomon talking about things that are independently sourced. Fact 6. The Ukrainian investigation of Hunter Biden's employer, Burisma, escalated in February 2016 when Shokin raided the home of company owner Zlochevsky. And I showed you the proof of that. 7. Shokin was making plans in February 2016 to interview Hunter Biden as part of the investigation. You could read his sworn deposition here, which we'll skip that, but he swears to that. Fact 8. Burisma's American representatives lobbied the state in late February 2016 to help end the corruption allegations against the company, specifically invoking Hunter Biden's name as the reason for that. Now, unfortunately, I believe Scrib wants me to have a subscription. But Blue Star in February, the State Department released memos showing efforts by Karen Tramontano to seek a meeting about Burisma corruption allegations. Unfortunately, this is behind a paywall. But it specifically mentions Hunter Biden's name. And so we can see that the State Department is admitting that the lawyers for Burisma, after the property was seized, reached out to the State Department and said, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Is there anything we could do? Fact 9. Joe Biden boasts in a 2018 videotape he forced Ukraine's president to fire Shokin in March. That's what I showed you. So look at the timeline here and consider what the Washington Post is saying. The timeline is as follows. In February 2nd, 2016, Viktor Shokin seizes the property of Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma. Joe Biden and Barack Obama claimed that Burisma was corrupt. After the property was seized, the American lawyers for Burisma contacted the State Department under Barack Obama and said, we want to talk about getting these charges of Burisma dropped. Oh, Hunter Biden works there. Less than a month later, Joe Biden issued his quid pro quo to force the firing of Shokin, claiming Shokin wasn't investigating, which is an absolute lie. Now, further, let's go down and see what else is said here. So we've proven both their claims are a lie. What you need to know, Biden did not push out a Ukrainian prosecutor investigating his son, Washington Post confirms. That's a lie, as I proved. The New York Post story had several red flags and holes that raised questions about his authenticity, according to journalists. What flags? Have they told you what they were? Again, these are the exact same journalists that pushed Russia disinformation in the form of the Steele dossier. That was totally debunked, but they pushed it as true. It's the same journalists that pushed the story that Brett Kavanaugh was a gang rapist with zero evidence. None. But we're supposed to believe, oh, well, they've debunked this. Where? Where's the debunking? Again, if the emails, even the Biden camp hasn't came out and said these emails aren't accurate. They can't even get their story straight. Well, they're hacked, so you shouldn't look at them. Okay, if they're hacked, then the emails are accurate. No, the emails aren't accurate. Okay, well, what about, so you're saying that they are all manufactured? Did they also manufacture the photos that came with them of Hunter Biden smoking crack? Was that also manufactured? It was just the emails were fake, but the pictures were real? Or are you claiming that these pictures were photoshopped and they're not actually of Hunter Biden? They have nothing. All they're doing is just all agreeing. This isn't a story. This doesn't prove that the story's false. What it does is proves that the Democrats in our media are a joke. They're just propagandists. Now, Greg Sargent here, the top thing posted on Twitter underneath this. So when you go to the top, it says, the New York Post story some are tweeting about has a huge falsehood in it. Story claims Biden pushed for the ouster of Ukrainian prosecutor when he was investigating Burisma. That's flatly false. And the ouster was backed by international institutions. Well, first, it doesn't matter if it was backed by international institutions. If a bunch of people said that James Comey should be fired and Trump fired James Comey, does that mean there shouldn't have been an investigation into Trump? Because we had one. And we had pretty much every Democrat and Republican saying to fire Comey. Yet, because there was a potential conflict of interest, we had to have a special prosecutor look and make sure that it was okay for Trump to fire him. So why would it be any different here? Who cares if a bunch of people and business leaders in the EU said, yeah, we also don't like Victor Shokin. And I'll get to how ridiculous this is anyways. So let's go to the article from the Washington Post. This is from September 27, 2019. I debunked this article at the time. There were about 7 or 8 articles that parroted this exact same information from places like BuzzFeed, Politico, the Washington Post. They all said the same thing. I went through them all and debunked them way back then in September 2019. But let's do it again. It says false. Biden pushed out a Ukrainian prosecutor investigating his son. Trump has falsely claimed that Biden in 2015 pressured the Ukrainian government to fire Victor Shokin, the top Ukrainian prosecutor, because he was investigating Ukraine's largest private gas company, Burisma, which had added Biden's son, Hunter, to its board in 2014. There are 2 big problems with this claim. 1, Shokin was not investigating Burisma or Hunter Biden. I already debunked that and proved that it was a lie. If he wasn't investigating, then under what criteria did he seize the assets of Burisma's founder? Is the claim, well, Shokin seized the assets of this guy but wasn't investigating him? Do you think that's how things work? Well, in Ukraine, they just seize assets for no reason. Hey, sir, I'm seizing your assets. Oh, I'm under investigation? No, of course not. You're not under investigation. We're just seizing your assets. Nonsense. So, again, the Washington Post lying here. And 2, Shokin's ouster was considered a diplomatic victory. By who? The Obama administration? Corrupt allies of Obama? Okay. What does that prove? Nothing. We'll move on. Biden was among the many Western officials who pressed for the removal of Shokin because he actually was not investigating the corruption endemic to the country. Indeed, he was not investigating Burisma at the time. Okay, so here's the claim. Joe Biden's son works for Burisma. Joe Biden and Barack Obama say that Burisma is corrupt. So we're supposed to believe that actually Joe Biden forcing the firing of this prosecutor was because this prosecutor was not investigating his son's company harshly enough. That is utter nonsense. If you believe that the vice president of the United States was upset that his son's company wasn't being investigated hard enough, you need to really rethink how you're looking at this situation. And again, if this is true, as I articulated last night, remember, once this prosecutor was fired, as we'll see here, the allegation is, oh, well, we couldn't give $1 billion to a country who had corrupt prosecutors who weren't investigating corrupt Russian oligarchs. Okay, fine. So once we fired that prosecutor and gave them $1 billion, did they arrest Zlochevsky? Did they charge Burisma with the corruption that Joe Biden and Barack Obama were illustrating? No, they didn't. The prosecution went to the allies of Obama and Biden, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of the Ukraine. They were created with money from Barack Obama's State Department. and were heavily allied with Barack Obama. So finally, if this claim's true, actually, the reason that Shokin needed fired was he wasn't investigating Burisma. Okay, he gets fired. Now it goes to Obama's allies in the NABU. Surely then they investigated it, right? No, they promptly dropped the investigation. So did Obama and Biden come out and say, wait a minute, we just gave you $1 billion because we thought you were going to go after these corrupt businesses, but you didn't. You dropped the cases. We want our money back. Did they say that? No, they didn't. Moving on, in September 2015, then ambassador to the Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, publicly criticized Shokin's office for thwarting the British money laundering probe into Burisma's owner, Silchevsky. Okay, so someone working under Obama criticized Shokin. Quote, Shokin was not investigating. He did not want to investigate Burisma. Kalunyik of the Ukrainian Anti-Corruption Action Center told the Washington Post in July, and Shokin was fired not because he wanted to do that investigation, but quite to the contrary, because he failed in that investigation. Now, we're going to stop here. I want you to realize something. Both the two people that they cited say, well, actually, Shokin wasn't investigating. That is contradicted by the actual evidence from a Ukraine press agency in real time, contemporary, that shows in February 2016, actually, Shokin was seizing the assets. Therefore, there was an investigation. Now, who are these two people? One, the ambassador under Barack Obama. Well, you saw the officials from the Ukraine under Barack Obama. Vindman, Yovanovitch, George Kent, folks like that. Right? You saw. You think they were unbiased? You think they're not going to go to bat for Obama and Biden? Of course they will. Now, who's this second person? Someone from the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Oh, it sounds quite reasonable, right? Anti-Corruption Action Center? They sound like someone who's really interested in getting out of corruption. I wonder what that organization's all about. Well, this is from John Solomon. This article is in March 26, 2019. Let me make sure you can all read this real quick. While the 2016 presidential race was raging in America, Ukrainian prosecutors ran into some unexpectedly strong headwinds as they pursued an investigation into the activities of a nonprofit in their homeland known as the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Wait, Anti-Corruption Action Center? That sounds familiar. Oh, that's where the person that the Washington Post is quoting to debunk the Joe Biden corruption stories from. Well, so they were being criminally investigated by the Ukrainian government? That's interesting. Let's go on. The focus on the Ant-AC, whose youthful street activists famously wore Ukrainian F corruption t-shirts, was part of a larger probe by Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office into whether $4.4 million in U.S. funds to fight corruption inside the former Soviet Republic had been improperly diverted. Wait a minute. So there were allegations that this organization was receiving money from Obama's administration, and that was criminally being investigated? Say it ain't so. The prosecutors soon would learn the resistance they faced was blowing directly from the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, where the Obama administration took the rare step of trying to press the Ukrainian government to back off its investigation of both the U.S. aid and the group. Really? Now, do you see what's going on here? The Washington Post is citing people from this organization to prove Joe Biden did nothing wrong. Problem is, this organization was paid by the Biden-Obama administration. And the Biden-Obama administration actively pressured the Ukrainian government to shut down their criminal investigation of this group. Let's read a little further because it's more shocking than just that. The investigation in the Anti-Corruption Center is based on assistance they've received from us. It's similarly misplaced. Then Embassy Charged Affairs George Kent wrote in the prosecutor's office in 2016 letter that also argued U.S. officials had no concerns about how the U.S. money had been spent. It turns out the group that Ukrainian law enforcement was probing was co-funded by the Obama administration and liberal megadonor George Soros. And it was collaborating with FBI agents investigating then-Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort business activities with pro-Russian figures in the Ukraine. The implied message to Ukraine's prosecutors was clear. Don't target the Ant-AC in the middle of an American presidential election in which Soros was backing Hillary Clinton to succeed another Soros favorite, Barack Obama, Ukrainian officials said. Do you see? So the very group that's propped up is, this group in the Ukraine shows that Shokin wasn't investigating. That's funny because Shokin's office, the Prosecutor General's office, was also investigating that group, who was paid by Barack Obama and your tax dollars and George Soros. And they were seeking to interfere in the election by going after Trump's campaign manager. Starting to see a pattern here? Now remember, George Kent was the first witness that testified at the impeachment hearing of Donald Trump. He claimed that John Solomon's reporting and allegations that the U.S. State Department interfered in prosecution decisions in the Ukraine was a flat-out lie. Let's look at a letter that George Kent wrote, shall we? Let me make sure y'all could read this. Here's the letter. Let's see who wrote it first. George Kent, right? There it is. You see? George Kent wrote the letter. So let's get to it. This is on April 4th, 2016. Thank you for your letter dated March 29, 2016 and the clarification of your remarks. I'm answering on behalf of the U.S. Embassy Pyatt. Or Ambassador Pyatt, I would like to make clear, as Ambassador Pyatt in his public statements, that the United States has no concerns about the use of our assistance funds from our joint project with the Prosecutor General's office. Furthermore, as we've said publicly, none of these assistance funds were provided directly to any entity within the Prosecutor General's office, including the Deputy Prosecutor and his staff. We've accounted for every single foreign assistant dollar provided within the framework. That's not true, by the way. Billions have been lost of this project, and it is our practice for every project we support in Ukraine. All of this assistance was administered according to U.S. laws and regulations and in strict compliance with our bilateral agreement dated March 13, 2015. The U.S. assistance package, which the Prosecutor General's office publicly stated it is investigating, is implemented through International Development and Law Organization, an intergovernmental organization, and through the U.S. State Department's Justice Office of Overseas Prosecutor Development Assistance and Training. Management and oversight of this funding is done by the U.S. Embassy in Kiev through the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement section. We also provided $200,000 for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, a Paris-based intergovernmental organization to assist in reforming the Prosecutor General's office. Again, none of these funds were provided directly to the government of Ukraine. To date, all of this assistance has supported expert advisors embedded within the Prosecutor General's office, who helped create the Reforms Department, developing reattestation for prosecutors in the line of the government of Ukraine, procuracy reform law, training of prosecutors of the Criminal Procedural Code, and capacity building for the Inspector General's unit. Now, here's where it gets good. Follow this. I'll slow down. This is George Kent, State Department, testified against Trump, testified that him and the embassy and the State Department in Ukraine under Obama never pressured the Ukrainian government to drop prosecutions. Quote, "We are completely satisfied that the assistance in question has only been used for the purposes and, as stated above, do not see any grounds from our perspective as the donor who provided the assistance for an investigation into their use. Given the above, we reject allegations that Mr. Sakarvali's, however you pronounce that, or anyone within the Prosecutor General's office with whom we worked could have misused these funds since they were never under their control. The investigation into the actions of the Anti-Corruption Action Center, based on the assistance they have received from us, is similarly misplaced." So he's saying, we don't want you investigating these people. They're innocent. But wait a minute, you say, that's not a threat. Now remember, Trump was impeached because he said, hey, we're giving you this aid. You should look into Joe Biden and Burisma. They said that was a quid pro quo, that was mafioso testing. That was saying, it's a shame that you won't be getting this money if you don't do this investigation. Remember? That's what the Democrats told you. Let's get to the next paragraph. As voiced by the European Union Ambassador Jan Tabinski, we are gravely concerned about this investigation, for which we see no basis, and which appears to us to be an attempt to intimidate those in the Prosecutor General's office most committed to combating corruption, as well as the non-governmental partners in outspoken anti-corruption activities. The United States is committed to supporting reforms within the PGO's office and building its capacity to meet citizens' demand to recover stolen assets and counter corruption within the government. What's he saying there? Hey, we gave you guys a lot of money. We're gravely concerned that you're investigating our allies. That's exactly what they accused Donald Trump of doing. Exactly. So here we have George Kent. Remember, this guy then testified in front of Congress. No, we never reached out to the Ukrainian prosecutor's office and recommended that they charge people or they drop charges into people. We never did that. That's a lie. That's a blatant lie. We could see that. And yet the Washington Post uses, who's the two people they use to just say, oh, Victor Shokin. Victor Shokin wasn't investigating this. Who's the two people they use? An ambassador under Obama, of course. That would be the equivalent of, if Rudy Giuliani comes out and goes, guys, I assure you, Trump didn't do anything corrupt. Would the media be like, oh, okay, it's debunked. Rudy Giuliani said it. They'd say, no, this is clearly an ally of Trump. That's not good enough for us. And then the second person they'd use is the Obama-Soros joint-funded anti-corruption action center that was being investigated for criminal charges that the investigation was forced to be dropped by the Obama-Biden administration. The facts are clear. Again, let me make this as clear as possible. I played you the video showing. Let's go back. What was their claims again? The point of this video? Vice President Biden played no role in pressuring Ukrainian officials to fire the prosecutor. That's a lie. I played you the words right out of Joe Biden's own mouth. And that prosecutor was not investigating the energy firm. That's a lie. As this article, I'll put the link out there. This article correctly shows as a lie. Actually, Victor Shokin had seized the assets in his investigation. Again, the timeline is incredibly important here. Shokin, February 2nd, seizes the assets of Zlochevsky. Zlochevsky's lawyers immediately reach out to the State Department in the United States and say, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Can you work with us to get these investigations dropped? Then, within a month, Joe Biden's admitting he went to the Ukraine and issued a quid pro quo, forcing the firing of that prosecutor. And the proof's in the pudding. The investigation after, they said, what did the Anti-Corruption Action Center say? What did they say? Actually, Shokin was not fired because he wanted to do that investigation, but quite to the contrary. He failed in that investigation. That's why he was fired. So according to these people that the Washington Post are citing, the reason that Shokin was fired because he was not investigating Burisma. But we know that's a lie. We know it's a lie because we could see that they seized the assets. We know that it's a lie because we could see that the lawyers for Zlochevsky and Burisma reached out to the State Department and said, why would the lawyers for Burisma reach out to the State Department in February 2016 and say, can you help us with this investigation if there was no investigation? Why would you do that? Do you think lawyers are in the business of saying, we're just going to make up hypothetical investigations? Let's say you were a lawyer for a company and you were worried that your company might be investigated for something, but that investigation wasn't happening. Would you actively reach out to the group that might be in charge of the investigation and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about potential hypothetical investigations? Of course not. The reason that Blue Star Strategies, again, the lawyers for Burisma and for Zlochevsky, the company Hunter Biden worked for, the reason they reached out to the State Department was because there was an investigation. And that's proven by the fact that the assets were seized. Then as soon as they reached out and they made sure to say, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Hunter Biden, right? The vice president's son works here. Can you guys do anything to help us? As soon as they reached out, Joe Biden got on a plane, goes to Ukraine, issues a quid pro quo with $1 billion of your tax dollars, gets that prosecutor fired. And then what's the end result? We're told, he got fired for not investigating Burisma. Oh, okay, well then surely the new prosecutors that were allied with Obama and Biden, surely they prosecuted them then, right? No, they dropped the investigation almost immediately. Exactly, 6079. You'd let sleeping dogs lie. If you committed a crime, you don't run around, and no one's investigating it, you don't run around saying, hey, hypothetically, if you ever investigate crimes I committed, I would like to talk to you. Hypothetically, that's not what you would do. So it's clear that there was an active investigation. It's clear that Joe Biden, from his own words, forced the firing of this prosecutor. It's clear that if the reason this prosecutor was fired was because Joe Biden and Barack Obama and the rest of the world was unhappy that the corrupt Burisma and its founder Zlochevsky wasn't being properly investigated, then why didn't one of these people speak up when the NABU dropped the charges against Zlochevsky? Wouldn't they have been outraged? We're told, oh my God, the whole world wanted Shokin gone because he was corrupt and he wasn't investigating Burisma. Okay, so the new prosecutors also didn't investigate Burisma. Even if you're right about Shokin, so wouldn't they have spoken up and said, wait a minute. These new people are just as bad as the old people. No, instead, they were receiving billions of dollars from Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And their office was being contacted saying, hey, we want you to drop investigations into our Soros-connected allies that are helping us investigate Paul Manafort. Now, why is this story important? Because Twitter is actively censoring the New York Post story, showing that we now have emails, which again, everybody says they're debunked. No one says how. Are the emails false? If so, are the pictures of Hunter Biden smoking crack that came along with them, are they also false? Joe Biden's team hasn't denied that the emails are real. Twitter and Facebook seem to suggest that the emails were hacked, which implies that they were real, even though they weren't hacked. So if the emails are real, it proves Joe Biden lied. He actually was aware of his son's business dealing with corrupt Burisma. He was issuing a quid pro quo because allegedly he was upset that Burisma wasn't being investigated. Meanwhile, he's meeting with his son and executives of Burisma. And so he lied to the American people. Again, the reason this story is so important, yes, it proves that the Democratic candidate for president, Joe Biden, is corrupt and a liar. And he used his office as vice president to benefit his son. He sold access, and he used $1 billion of your tax dollars in a quid pro quo to fire a prosecutor that was actively looking into his son's energy company. That's devastating. That's everything that they've spent 4 years accusing Donald Trump of times 10. But it's not just about that. Remember, they impeached Donald Trump over this. It's not just Joe Biden. The entire Democratic Party, they knew about this. Remember, John Kerry's son's connected to this. Mitt Romney has family that's connected to this. This runs deep on both sides. And so when Trump started to say, hey, I want this investigated, they impeached Trump. It's not just Joe Biden's corruption. If I knew about it, the Democrats knew about it, and yet they impeached Trump. Why? Because they're trying to cover up the corruption. The media refused to investigate and covered up for this, like the Washington Post. This story is everything because it shows how they're all connected and they're all corrupt. They all know Joe Biden was corrupt. They know it. And yet they refuse to cover it and they cover up for it. Even to the point of endorsing impeaching the president for investigating this corruption. So if Joe Biden wins or loses and more evidence of this comes out, don't let the Democratic Party say, well, okay, maybe Joe Biden did something. We were unaware of that. They're lying. Don't let the media go, oh, well, maybe this does look shady, but we were okay in our coverage. They're lying. They left no stone unturned in the hoax against Trump with Russia, yet this story's been right in their face. Remember, I even showed you back in 2019, places like the Washington Post that were writing in 2018, yeah, the appearance looked really bad of Joe Biden, supposedly the point man and ending Ukrainian corruption, while his son was on the board of directors of the most corrupt Ukrainian company. It looked really bad. It looked like the appearance of a conflict of interest, but there wasn't a conflict of interest. What are you talking about? Of course there was a conflict of interest. Did Joe Biden force the firing of the prosecutor that was looking into his son's company? Yes, end of story. Now, you could argue, but there's no proof that's why Biden wanted that prosecutor fired. But you can't argue that that prosecutor was looking into his son's company. At least on paper. Even though I've proven that it's more than that. But isn't this reason for an investigation? Again, if we can't agree in this country, if a high-ranking executive branch official uses taxpayer money to force the firing of a prosecutor looking into his son's business, I don't care if his name's Trump, Biden, Obama, Ron Paul, Jill Stein. It doesn't matter. There needs to be an investigation. Period. Ivan Flutch says the prosecutor Shokin was corrupt. Show me proof. How is he corrupt? And Ivan Fluck also says, getting this heated for 3 viewers. Yes, I do get heated for even 1 viewer. I get this heated if I'm by myself. But I am streaming on DLive, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope all at the same time. So actually, I have more than 3 viewers. Show me evidence that he was corrupt. Shokin was corrupt. Shokin was corrupt. He wasn't. Even, let's say theoretically that's true. Let's say Shokin was corrupt in other things. He was smoking crack. He was working with crack dealers, whatever. The prosecutor didn't investigate the corruption for years. That's a lie. He seized the assets of the company in February 2nd, 2016. Where's your proof that he wasn't? Here's the proof from the Ukrainian news agency. Is the Ukrainian news agency writing on February 4th, 2016? Are they lying? Are they lying when they say that Shokin seized this property on February 2nd, 2016? And if your claim is, well, he should have done more earlier, then why didn't Joe Biden and Barack Obama do anything to force the firing of this prosecutor back then? Instead, they waited until he actually was taking credible steps in the investigation, and then until Burisma's attorneys contacted the State Department under Biden and Obama. Then they decided this guy needed to be fired. So according to you, this would be the timeline of events. So, okay, this prosecutor Shokin didn't do anything for a year. And then when he finally started to do something, Barack Obama and Joe Biden got around to being like, oh, now just coincidentally, we want this guy fired because he didn't do anything for a year. So then they get him fired, and then the new prosecutors do nothing about the investigation. Yeah, D-Live's the place to be. If you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, go to Normal America on D-Live. James says, why did Rudy G sit on this info for so long? I don't know. It's a good question. Now, from what I've been told, I don't know how long Rudy's had this computer. I believe the timeline is he only got the hard drive like a month or two ago. And Rudy claimed on his show yesterday that they were doing their due diligence to go through all of the information before releasing any of it. A better question is, why is the FBI set on all this information? And again, Rudy only set on the access from the hard drive. Rudy was out there telling you all of this stuff. This, again, here's an article from Rudy talked about this article. February 4th, 2016, proving that when was the Washington Post debunk? September 27th, 2019. So their debunk was disproved way back 3 years before that. So it wasn't just Rudy sitting on all this information. John Solomon's been reporting this all along. It's just the left controls the flow of information, and so they refuse to talk about the obvious lies. And you saw it. When anyone would dare to ask Joe Biden, he would scream at them, call them fat, challenge them to push-up competitions. The media was like, whoa, okay, then we won't ask you about this because they're afraid of an old man, Joe Biden? Please, it's because they're involved in the corruption. How am I so confident that Biden's story is a lie? Biden claims that Shokin wasn't investigating. That's his claim, right? That's a lie. The Ukrainian news agency shows that actually Shokin seized the property in February 2nd, 2016. So Biden then claiming a month later he went over and forced the firing of this prosecutor because he was corrupt is a lie. I also know that the story doesn't make sense for various other reasons, in addition to the actual evidence that we have. Here's how I know. I know that Joe Biden's story that actually he was upset that the prosecutor wasn't investigating his son's company hard enough is garbage. That's garbage. That's not how parents think. And particularly someone who's so protective of his son that he claims the obvious things we see are true, like his son having drug addiction problems. That's a lie. That's all been disproven. And he yells and screams anytime anyone brings up his son. So I know that he's not the type of father that would be like, please investigate my son's company more. Second, even if that was true, why didn't he and Barack Obama and all of these Europeans that were so upset that Viktor Shokin, this prosecutor, was corrupt and not investigating Burisma? When the investigation then got kicked to the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, which was funded by Barack Obama's State Department and dropped cases for Barack Obama because they were allied with him, why didn't all of those people, including Joe Biden, freak out when the NABU actually dropped the case into Burisma and Zlochevsky? Of course, Biden admitted he went through crack addiction. His father still says anytime things like that are brought up, oh, it's a lie, and it gets angry and doesn't want to talk about it. That's a great question. Did the FBI notify the DOJ? This is always the case. The FBI sits on incriminating evidence. They constantly look at the Hillary investigation. They know that Hillary deleted 30,000 subpoenaed emails. That's a crime. That's obstruction of justice. They did nothing. They know that Mills and Aberdeen lied to them about when they knew about the server. They did nothing. They know that Hillary Clinton lied to the FBI when she said she thought the C on the documents stood for alphabetical order and not classified. Yet they did nothing. They knew that the Podesta Group worked with Paul Manafort in failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, and they charged Manafort for that. Yet, with the Podesta Group, they did nothing. They know that they had this information showing that Hunter Biden was working for the Communist government of China and was getting paid by Burisma. They did nothing. I'm not going to buy followers. Sorry. I don't care if I'm famous. I care about talking to people in a good faith conversation. Yeah, Biden admitted he went through crack. If you watched my show last night, I don't care at all. I don't think that's his... One, as someone who had alcohol problems in their past, I'm not going to judge anyone for addiction problems if they're, I'm not going to crap on them for it. Second, I don't see the relevance for why that impugns Joe Biden. The story isn't about Hunter Biden's crack problems. The story is about the fact that his company was being investigated by a prosecutor and his dad leveraged his position as vice president to force the firing of that prosecutor. That's the story. Yeah, Brady says it's taken time, but the truth is leaking out. Right, and we could see more than any point in history how much the media and Silicon Valley is willing to censor any criticism of their political party, the Democratic Party. They declared war yesterday. They own you. That's what they declared. They're desperate. They know that everything that they accused Donald Trump of doing, of being corrupt with Russia, is actually true of Joe Biden with pro-Russian oligarchs in Burisma and with the Communist government of China. They know that's true. They know that they've buried that information for more than 4 years. And so now, if it comes out, remember, and I wanted to say this, someone said this, Epic says, maybe they're trying to save credibility with the media will crucify Joe for this after the election. So he resigns and your friend Kamala takes over and nothing changes. Yeah, that's exactly what they'll try. That's why I'm telling you, this isn't just a Joe Biden story. I know all of this information, which means the media knows it, which means the Democratic Party knows it. So later when they try to say, okay, yeah, it was one bad apple, that's a lie. Don't let them get away with it. Yeah, I'm heading out to Wild Saffron. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you're new here, thanks so much. Yeah, my channel's not very big. If you'd like to support me, please like and subscribe. You could also send me donations. I would really appreciate it. But if you share my information or share my videos with other people, I'd really appreciate it as well. Consider following me on multiple platforms. If you're on YouTube, consider following me on DLive and Twitch, particularly DLive, because YouTube censors me all the time. So you can find me at DLive at Normal America, at Twitch at Normal America with Rob Noor, and at YouTube at Normal America with Rob Noor. So consider checking me out on multiple platforms because I get shadow banned and things like that. I'm just heading out, Paul. Thanks for stopping in. So please, the information here starts at 5 minutes. Please share this video. You have my permission, anyone watching, to use this video as you see necessary. I'm less concerned with, I'd appreciate if you put my name to it or a link to my channel, but other than that, I'm less concerned with getting praise for this. I've definitively debunked the Washington Post debunking of the New York Post story. It is absolute garbage. Start 5 minutes in on this video and watch the rest of it. It's a definitive debunk using Joe Biden's own words, using official documents from press agencies in the Ukraine that officially debunks it. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate all of you. As always, have a good one.